these are the tools I'm going to need to take the rear shocks off. I've already had a look and I know that I can't undo the bolt with sheer strength, so I've got a heat gun, I've got a kitchen caramelizer, some butane to run it, a 2-ton trolley jack to get the car up, axle stand, electrical supply, breaker bars, extension bars, sockets, and most importantly a brand new 18mm socket that cost me all of £1.08 from B&Q. I've brought the jack in directly from the rear and then reinforced it with the axle stand. This is the part I'm trying to get at, and this is the part that's obviously failed as well. That's the bottom of the shock. This distance should be the same as this distance. The bush has pulled out and it's now banging on the bracket. I've already had a go at trying to do this, and as you can see the head of the bolt is trying to round. Like everything else on here, these things have got captive nuts. Everything's corroded. The car's, well, 15, 16 years old now. So I'm going to heat this up with a heat gun. I've already soaked it over 2 days, and then hopefully that will loosen everything up. This is a kitchen caramelizer. This is a nice hot flame. I'm going to get that on the nut underneath. What I'm trying to do is burn off all the rust and heat the nut up so that it expands enough to make it loosen off. Now I've got a birthday candle here. If I touch that on there, that melts. Whether that or not that will help it to come off, I don't know, but it shows me that it's very hot. I'm going to heat this up again. I don't think this is hot enough. Next I'm going to have a go with the hot gun. This is supposed to go up to 600 degrees. I want to warm everything up, but I don't want to mount the rubbers or any of the cables that are close by. Okay, well, despite heating it up, put the flame on it, heating it up to 600 degrees, it will not shift. I've now mullered the head, so I'm going to have a go at cutting off the captive nut with a disc grinder. I've never done this before, so this should be interesting. Black & Decker disc grinder with a cutting wheel, eye protection, big thick gloves. Now this is as far as I've got so far, so I'm going to keep at it. Fortunately the sparks come out of the car rather than into the car. Well, it's taken me about 3/4 of an hour to grind the nut off. There's what's left of it, and there you can see where I've hit it with a hammer and it's broken the bond, but I still can't undo this. I've heated it up again, I've prized it, I've hammered it. The next thing I'm going to try to do is cut through the inner sleeve and see if that helps me. I've hacksawed right through the bolt and the sleeve, and I've been able to knock out the end of the shock, and the bush fell out with it. Now all I've got to do is get the nut head out, which is still sitting in there. I'm going to try turning it out, but I'll probably have to punch that out. Right, that won't turn out and it won't drive out, so I'm going to get the disc cutter on it again and see if I can just cut it off flush till there's nothing to hold it in anymore. Well, I finally got it out. I had to grind off the captive nut, I had to saw through the sleeve and the bolt, I had to grind off the rest of the sleeve, and then finally force the nut head out. So now I'm going to try and get the other end off, which is held in with 2 nuts. The other end is held on by 2 14mm bolts, which must be some kind of clamp because this is a T-piece on the end. I've just started undoing this first one, and that's proved to be remarkably easy, so let's hope that the other one is the same. You need a long extension bar and a ratchet to reach up into here. Using a variety of mix and match extension bars, I've finally got the 2 bolts that hold the other end in. What I didn't realise is that they are actually studs. One of the studs has come out, the other one's still in, and I've lost the nut to the other one, so now I've got to work out how I'm going to get this new one back in. Well, this is the new shock absorber. and it looks a better one than the one that's come off it. For a start, the sleeve is made out of metal rather than out of plastic, and the fittings are obviously in a lot better condition. Let's hope that it's going to be reasonably easy to get back on. I've got myself a major problem here. These two studs seem to be fused to the bodywork, and one of them I've wrung off, and there's nothing to screw it back into. There's no stud, so I'm going to have to try and forge a thread through that piece of metal there in order to connect a bolt. I don't know how this is going to work out. I've managed, by weaving my drill in, to be able to get up and hopefully reach the hole. I just need to enlarge it very slightly, and then I've got another stud that I can drop in, so we'll see how that goes. Right, I'm going to try and fiddle this stud in through the hole and drop it into where I've just drilled it out. I've hung some garden wire on it, so when the inevitable happens and I drop it, it doesn't go right down inside the car. Well, with some luck, I've actually managed to get it to drop in the right position. So now I'm going to mix up some araldite metal and glue it in place, go off and have my lunch, and half an hour later, hopefully I shall be able to do that up. Finally got to the point where I'm putting the new bottom bolt in, and this is an M12 x 80. It's actually cheaper to buy it as a packet of 50 from Screwfix than it is to buy 2 from Halfords. You can see that they're rated bolts. The other advantage is that they take a 19mm socket rather than the epoxy 18 that's fitted on it. I've put washers and spring washers on both sides to make sure it's nice and tight and won't rattle itself undone, and also make it easier to undo in the future. Try not to round it by being overzealous. Well, now I know why the original shocks had plastic uppers that were nice and soft and malleable, because it is actually impossible to get a socket on there with these steel shocks. So what I've had to do is tighten it up as much as I can using the end of a spanner, and then I've put in a spring washer and another nut to double it up to make sure it's all nice and tight and it won't undo. I'm hoping this is not going to rattle its nuts off, literally, but it's all back together now, so it's time to get the wheel back on and have a test flight. Well, that sounds different. No banging, crunching sound. It was a bit disconcerting now. I'm so used to it that I don't know what it's supposed to sound like. Well, I've only changed the left hand side, so the right hand side is a bit noisy. That's the next job. I'm not looking forward to that. It's taken me a day and a half to do one side, but it sounds like it's done the job. Just chucking it around our little lane. I can't actually go very fast down here, but it's very lumpy, and it gives a good approximation of sort of every terrain in about a mile. And I'm just not getting that banging noise anymore. That is so pleasing. Mind you, it's not a real surprise. The bush was hanging off by a thread. Well, that's the lesson learnt, really. If it starts to make a lot of noise out the back of the car, check the shock mount first. That's more than likely what it is.